So on the first night of free agency, we went over the James Bradberry and Blake Martinez signings. If you missed that video, go ahead and check it out. But I have not addressed the Kyler Fackrell, Cam Fleming, Levine Toilolo, Colt McCoy, or Nate Ebner signings yet, so we'll get into those. I'll give some background information. Do I like the signings? Maybe give them a grade if I remember. I probably won't, but I'll try to give them a grade. And let me know if you guys like those signings, and let's get into it. So we'll start out on a positive note here. My favorite contract we gave out, Kyler Fackrell, 1 year, $4.6 million. He's 6'5", 245, 28 years old. Played on the Packers from 2016 to 2019. A former third-round pick, I believe, out of Utah or something, Utah State, something like that. He is my favorite signing, as I said before. Could he be Marcus Golden 2.0? Remember, Marcus Golden was a guy coming off injuries, had a good 2015 season, came here after having some pretty down years, and then came here, had a great year of 10 sacks, was a productive player. And, I think Anthony on our podcast said he could be like Shaq Barrett. That might be excessive because Shaq Barrett had 19 sacks last year, but I see what he means based off the impact that Kyler Fackrell can make here. I think it's very possible. He played under Patrick Graham in Green Bay in 2018 when he had 10.5 sacks that year, so that's definitely great to reunite those guys. And I even went over this before, actually. I don't think I posted it on Twitter, but I was going to. That even Blake Martinez had 5 sacks under Patrick Graham. So hopefully Kyler Fackrell and Blake Martinez can get to the quarterback a lot next year because they did that in 2018 when Patrick Graham was there. He should definitely be a starter on this team. I think it's going to be Fackrell, and then on the opposite side, either O'Shane Ximines or Lorenzo Carter. I personally hope it's Ximines because I think he has a higher ceiling, but we'll see how the Giants play that out next year. So the positives, the Giants needed a player that can get to the quarterback. We know that they did not go after Jadeveon Clowney too much. I mean, they might have, but didn't give him an offer that he wanted. So that's not happening. They did not get Dante Fowler, guys like that. Jordan Jenkins, who some people wanted, even though I think him and Fackrell are not too far apart. So we got Fackrell, and I'm definitely fine with that. Had 10.5 sacks in 2018 under Patrick Graham, as I mentioned before. He had a 14.7 pressure percentage on pass rushing plays in 2019. It's a pretty good percentage. I mean, he was not playing a lot last year due to the Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith signings, but when he was out there, he was effective at getting to the quarterback and at least giving pressures. He, when I made his highlight tape, he had about 3 or 4 sacks that he was like this close to getting, and like just plays that the quarterback would just like flip out to the running back. So he was very close. He should have had way more than 1 sack last year. So stats could be deceiving. He has good durability. Only missed 3 games in the 4 seasons. He has good power and finesse. I mean, sometimes guys have, they're just really powerful but don't have those finesse moves, and sometimes guys are just speed rushers with all finesse and no power, but I see both from this guy, so I like that. He has an effective spin move when rushing, so that's another good pass rushing move he has. The negatives is his missed tackle percentage of 14% in the past 3 seasons. That's not so great, and he's not like the greatest athlete in the world. I mean, you don't need to be, but that would be a plus, but he's not the greatest athlete, but being 6'5" and 248, 245 can definitely help you a lot. So this is my favorite signing. Great value, 1 year, $4.8 million. This was a guy that I really wanted the Giants to go after Yannick Ngakoue was franchise tagged. I wanted like a good low-key pass rusher that would not cost too much money but still be effective, and I think based off Patrick Graham being here and him playing under Graham in 2018, this was a terrific signing. Next, we have Cameron Fleming, the offensive tackle, 1 year, $4 million, 6'6", 317, age 27. New England Patriots from 2014 to 2017, and the Dallas Cowboys the previous 2 seasons. If you watch my videos from way back, like when I first started doing commentaries, you would notice that the last 2 offseason videos I made, I wanted Cameron Fleming to go to the Giants, and of course they don't sign him, and the one offseason I don't want Cameron Fleming, they sign him. So it's kind of funny how that works, and this is a guy that I wanted the past 2 off seasons, but here we are, and he's finally a Giant. So he has 26 career starts since 2014. Obviously not a starting player. He's more of a fill-in, plug-and-play type of, left tackle, right tackle. I guess could play some guard if he needed to. He's another Stanford guy. I mean, I think most guys the Giants signed this offseason were Stanford guys. I know Toilolo was, Martinez was, and Cam Fleming was. So 3 of the free agent signings are Stanford guys, and I think Caden Smith was, if I remember correctly, as well. So he played under Mark Colombo, the current offensive line coach for this team when he was in Dallas, so that's definitely nice to have a connection there. He might have had some influence on this signing as well. He will probably compete with Nick Gates for right tackle, the starting job at right tackle, depending on what they do in the draft. I mean, right now in the depth chart, I guess Cam Fleming is the starter technically, but if Nick Gates is really impressive in camp, then I guess he can be the starter next year, so I feel like those guys might battle it out in camp next year. And we know Mike Remmers actually went to the Chiefs today, so he won't be be back. I don't think the Giants have enough money for him at this point anyway, so he's not an option. It's just Cam Fleming and Nick Gates at right tackle, depending on what they do in the draft. And he should be a fine depth piece. I don't know about him being a starter. That's kind of risky in my mind. When I went back and watched him last year, there was some red flags. I watched him against Darius Smith on the Packers. He had some good reps, but then some really bad reps. Had a couple penalties as well for holding, so I wasn't too impressed. He might be, I'll go over this actually right after this, so not going to get into that yet, but he had 0 blown blocks on 100 rushing snaps last year, which is really good. So I think he's a really good run blocker. I noticed that watching him. I know he plays tackle, and it'd be better to be a good run blocker as a guard, but still being a good run blocker as a tackle is just fine as well. So he was really good at that, but he had some kind of, he had some shaky pass reps in there, so that's definitely something to watch out for. Good run blocker. His contract's not a concern. It's not like we signed this guy to a multi-year deal. He does have strong hands. He's the type of guy that once he gets his hands on you, very hard to escape from him, so that's definitely a good thing. But the negatives, 8 blown blocks on 147 passing snaps. That's a 5.4% rate. Not crazy terrible, but not that good either. He might be a New England guy, quote unquote, and that's the thing I was going to say before. I didn't want to get into it yet, but sometimes on the Patriots, guys just fit in their system and play really well, and I'm afraid that Cam Fleming might be a guy like that. I personally hope not. We know Tom Brady's the type of quarterback, the former Patriot quarterback, which is crazy to say, but he's the type of guy that would get the ball out real quick and really not put his offensive lineman under much pressure. But last year, playing with the Cowboys in the previous 2 years, he did have some moments where he let up some pressures and passing plays, but he was really good in New England. That's why I wanted him a couple off seasons ago. So his lateral movements and the footwork was kind of unimpressive to me. It could have been better, so watch out for that. He's not very aggressive in his pass sets. He kind of just lets the guy come to him. I would like him to be a bit more aggressive, so we'll see how that plays out. And he did have some rough moments against Darius Smith in their matchup. I know Smith's a really good outside linebacker, but it looked rough at some points, I'll put it that way. So, for the grade for this one, I'd probably give it a B. I think it's a low-risk, high-reward type of thing. I was higher on Fleming a couple years ago. He kind of got exposed last year at some points, but he's not the worst option in the world. He's not Eric Flowers playing left tackle, so it is what it is. It's a nice depth move. I personally hope he's on the bench next year. You guys know my plan would be to have Andrew Thomas at left tackle or Jedrick Wills, and then move Nate Solder to right tackle. That's what I personally want. I don't see it happening, but that's the way I would do it, and hopefully Cam Fleming is a nice bench option. So it's a B for me. I don't know if I gave Fackrell a grade, but I would give that one an A+. That's like a low risk, very high reward type of thing, just like Marcus Golden last year. So I love that move, and the Cam Fleming one is a pretty good move, but he's not as good of a player as Kyler Fackrell in my opinion. Up next is Levine Toilolo. Hopefully I pronounced that right. That's a tough name to say sometimes. Toilolo. Hopefully I got that one right. 2 years, $6.2 million. He is surprisingly 6'8 and 270. I thought he'd be like 6'5, but yeah, the guy's 6'8, 28 years old. He'll be 29 in July. Played with the Atlanta Falcons from 2013 to 2017, the Lions in 2018, and the Niners last season. So he is basically the Rhett Ellison replacement. He's our tight end number 3 in all likelihood, assuming we still have Evan Engram next year, who I guess is a trade candidate, but he should be here next year as of right now, and then Caden Smith behind him. So probably Toilolo as a third string option. So he's another Stanford guy. I mentioned that before. And the positives here, he has 1 blown block and 126 rushing snaps in 2019. You love seeing that. 2% blown blocks on run and pass plays since 2016, which is a little better than Rhett Ellison's numbers. A big target that could potentially help in the red zone. He's not the best receiver out there. He's not the fastest guy. He's actually kind of slow. I wish he was faster. He'd be like a complete beast, but he does have some speed limitations. But he's not too bad with the ball in his hands. He can go up and make some catches. He knows how to throw some guys off him sometimes, the smaller cornerback type guys, so that's good to see. He's had no drop passes from 2018 to 2019, which was 26 targets, so at least he's somewhat reliable. I know it's a small sample size, but that's good to see. Good contract, has no dead cap space for 2021, so if he's awful this year, the Giants can release him next year with no cap hit, no penalty or anything like that. Has good experience, 2 Super Bowl appearances, one with the Falcons, which was a very tough 28-3 loss, and then last year, a 20-10 loss. So this guy's had a rough NFL career so far. I know he's in the NFL, and that's great and all, but to lose the Super Bowl when you had, 2 games of like a 95% chance of winning and losing both of them, that's got to be a bit rough, so I feel for him there. The negatives, doesn't offer much in the receiving game. I think the guy's a good blocker, but as I said, he does have some speed limitations. pretty solid hands, but when, he's just not that great at getting open. He does not have that separation ability, and that's just how it is. And not much upside. I mean, sometimes you sign a tight end, like the guy I wanted, Ricky Seals-Jones, I think had a lot of upside. He's 24 years old, so he's younger, 5 years younger, basically, and just had a lot more upside because it's a younger guy, and Ricky Seals-Jones is a lot faster, just, I think, a better receiver. Levine Toilolo is probably a better blocker than Ricky Seals-Jones, but he is the higher upside guy. So I'm sure the Giants will use him the right way. This isn't like the biggest signing in the world, just a good depth piece, and hopefully he could be a good third-string tight end and can come in on some goal line situations, lay out some nice blocks, maybe make, 20, 25 receptions this year and make somewhat of an impact, maybe have 3-4 touchdowns or something. So that would be nice to see. Hopefully they use him the right way. He could be a good player if he's used the right way. So with that being said, I would give this signing probably a B. I mean, there's really not much I can say negatively about this move. I wish it was someone with a bit more upside. I wanted Ricky Seals-Jones, as I said, but I'll take Levine Toilolo, not the worst option in the world, so I give it a B. Up next is Nate Ebner, the safety/special teams player from the New England Patriots, 6 feet tall, 220 pounds, 31 years old, a New England Patriot from 2012 to 2019, which was Joe Judge's entire tenure there. So those guys have been together for a long time and continue that relationship. He could be Michael Thomas's replacement. Michael Thomas, the guy who came from the Dolphins, played really well for this team when he was in there on special teams and even playing some safety for us. He was a good option there. He's a free agent, though, I believe, so he might be gone due to this Nate Ebner signing, but look, a new coach, that's what happens. You bring in your own guys, and this is a perfect example of it. So he probably won't see the field much on defense. He's barely had any actual defensive snaps. He's just strictly a special teams player. Played at Ohio State from 2009 to 2011. Played professional rugby in the 2016 Olympics, so that was actually really cool. I forgot all about that. I remember there was some NFL player that played rugby at some point, and it turns out it was Nate Ebner, so that was cool to see. He's a multi-sport athlete, basically, a professional multi-sport athlete. So the positives, he was with Joe Judge, as I said, from 2012 to 2019. I'm sure those guys know each other very well. They have a solid relationship, I'm sure. A solid special teams player, was making a lot of tackles out there when I was watching him play. A contract that should be a cheap one. I don't know the numbers on this one yet. I don't know if the numbers came out, but it really can't be too much money, so I wouldn't be too concerned about that one. He rarely misses games. He missed 7 games in 2017, but aside from that, has played in basically every game. Has plenty of experience. He's been to a lot of Super Bowls. He played in 4 of them. He's won 3 Super Bowls, so brings that experience here. And look, the guy's a multi-sport athlete, so I love seeing that. And the negatives is his defense. He's played one defensive snap in the past 3 seasons, so that's really not a lot at all. 1 snap in 3 seasons on defense, so if the guys in front of him go down, like Jabril Peppers or whoever, I don't really expect Nate Ebner to be the guy to step in here. They'd probably sign someone off the street or have another option back there, so I wouldn't really count on this guy to play any defensive snaps. But if he can make an impact on special teams, I saw him last year with a blocked punt. He recovered a blocked punt at one point as well. He's had a nice career on special teams, so if he can continue to do that here, that would be a solid signing. Just another one with a very low risk and a high reward on special teams plays. So another one, I'd probably give this one like an A, because look, the guys had a good relationship with Joe Judge. They know each other very well, and I'm sure he'll get the most out of Nate Ebner, so I'm a fan of this signing. Lastly, we have Colt McCoy, quarterback, 1 year, $2.25 million. He's 6'1", 210 pounds, 33 years old, a Cleveland Brown from 2010 to 2012, the 49ers in 2013, and played for the Washington Redskins from 2014 to 2019. So he should compete with Alex Tanney, but I do believe he'll be the actual second-string backup. He will be the guy in there if something were to happen to Daniel Jones. I mentioned that before. Daniel Jones has had some injuries in his past, a broken collarbone in college, which he only missed like a couple games from somehow, but yeah, he still had the injury. And then the ankle injury last year where he probably could have played through it, but they wanted Eli Manning out there, so I don't know how many games he should have missed, but he did miss 2, so I mean, I have to include that in there. So in his one start against New England last year, he went 18 for 27, 122 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. That's pretty rough, but when I went back and watched that game, the guy was sacked a lot. His offensive line did him no favors, so can't put that all on him. His positives, it's a cheap 1-year contract. I like that. He's familiar with the division. He's been in this division since 2014. Maybe give us some insight on the Redskins. I know it's a different coaching staff now, but he knows a lot of the players on that team at least. Decent rushing ability. I did not know that about Colt McCoy, so I went back and watched him. He had some plays where he eluded from the pocket, got some solid yardage, picked up a few first downs, so he has some rushing ability in his game. He's not like a mobile quarterback. I wouldn't call him that, but he at least has that in his back pocket. pocket. And speaking of pocket, he maneuvers the pocket pretty well. So I like that about him as well. He's not like a statue back there. He's not a Phillip Rivers or Eli Manning type guy. He can maneuver the pocket pretty well. Downgrades. So speaking of Eli Manning, he is a downgrade from Eli Manning. I had to put the winky face there because we should know that. I mean, Eli Manning, probably a future Hall of Fame quarterback. He was great to have as a backup last year, and now we're taking a step down. I think we should all know that. Only 3 starts since 2015, so not a ton of playing experience under his belt. You'd rather have a guy like I wanted, Case Keenum or Chase Daniel. Those would probably cost more. I think Case Keenum actually got a lot of money from the Browns. I'm not sure what the contract was. I feel like it was like maybe $6 to $8 million per year, so that's too much for me for a backup quarterback. And I think Chase Daniel is still unsigned, but I could be wrong about that, but I feel like I haven't seen it yet. So his arm strength isn't terrible, but it's not elite. It's not like the greatest arm in the world. It's probably somewhere around Daniel Jones, who, Daniel Jones has a pretty decent arm, but it's not great either, so it's probably around the same thing. And his footwork is jittery at times. That could be due to the offensive line issues I talked about before. I mean, he did have some jittery feet, though, on some passes, so it wasn't the most flawless footwork I've ever seen from a quarterback, but he's not a bad option. He's definitely not the best backup quarterback in the league. There's better options out there, but it's really not the worst thing in the world, so I can live with it. We honestly would hope that Daniel Jones can play a full 16 games next year so we don't have to worry about a backup quarterback, but in the event that he does go down, Colt McCoy is not complete trash. He should be okay. He won't be as good as Daniel Jones, obviously, but he could come in here, do some nice things. I like how he has, some rushing ability and can make some nice throws at times. He's not the most consistent guy due to the footwork and the lack of arm strength at times, but it is what it is. So this is not the best signing, not the worst signing either. I'd probably give it like a B-. I'm not too in love with it, but it could be worse. So I wanted another guy, Jeff Driscoll. That's another guy I wanted. I forget where he went. It might have been Denver, actually. I wanted Jeff Driscoll. He's a good running quarterback, but he's a lot younger as well. So that's a guy I wanted, but he's in Denver now. So Colt McCoy is our guy. As I said, Daniel Jones, just stay healthy next year, and hopefully you won't have to worry about this. So that'll do it for this video. I just want to say my grade for the entire free agency period, because I feel like most of our big spending is over, I'd probably give it a C+. I know it's not the greatest grade in the world, but there were some better options out there, in my opinion. The guys I wanted, look, I'm not always right. I get that completely, but the guys I wanted out there, Corey Littleton only got a couple more $1 million per year than Blake Martinez, and Brian Poole got a 1-year, $5 million deal. Ted Karras, the center I wanted, got a 1-year, $4 million deal. So the guys I wanted got some pretty good contracts, and then you see moves like, I know it's months later, but Jarrell Casey got traded for a 7th round pick, and we're trading a 3rd round pick for Leonard Williams, and now he's making $16 million next year on a franchise tag, which is just, it's a lot. $16 million is a lot for a guy like Leonard Williams, so I hope that's worth it. But this offseason could have been handled a bit differently and probably a little better in my opinion, but it's not the worst offseason in the world. We talked about it on the podcast, a lot of these contracts are front-loaded contracts, which I think is a good idea. And, for my sake, I hope it's good for the next GM, because you guys know I'm not the biggest Gettleman fan, so hopefully for the next GM, that'll be a good thing, but that's too far to think about in advance. So, look, for this team next year, they got better. I'll admit that. They have more talent than they did before the offseason, so this defense should be a bit better. They still don't have the alpha pass rusher. They don't have the great left tackle or even right tackle that we want right now. There's still important positions out there we have not filled. They technically don't have a starting free safety yet, so that's another issue. They don't have a starting center, so there are some holes on this team still that they hopefully can address in the draft, but we'll see what happens there. So I would give the offseason a C+ so far. That obviously could change if the draft goes really well, but we'll see what happens. So let me know what you guys think about the offseason. What would you grade it so far? I think we'll see everything from an F to an A, so I'm expecting some crazy answers out there, but we'll see what you guys say. And as always, thank you for watching.